Mixties presents the Popcast.
Hey, my name is Brian, and that is Shane, and this is the Popcast, and today we are spoiling The Dark Tower with our very non-exclusive spoiler review of Stephen King's The Dark Tower, the movie, so technically not Stephen King's, but he did write the book, but this is not actually the book, so something like that. It's The Dark Tower. Opened last night, boys and girls, and I am not a reader of the books, but Shane is a reader of the books, so you have a fresh perspective from both a reader and a fan of the books and someone who never read them. Shane?
Well, I mean, as it said when the screen first came up, based on The Dark Tower. So I hate it when they do that. I hate it when they based on. I mean, I understand that you can only do so much with long work. I mean, there are 8 books, 8 Dark Tower books. Stephen King himself said purists probably wouldn't like this movie. I consider myself a purist. I know everything about the books. I've read them 3-4 times, listened to them several times. Outside of The Lord of the Rings, they're probably, in my opinion, the second greatest set of novels ever written. So I went into this movie scared with the 94-minute time. I was like, what can you do with 94 minutes in The Dark Tower? Other than set up a movie, which they did not do, or set up a series, which they did not do. So I was disappointed.
Well, let's, from my perspective, having never read the books, I went into it with great anticipation because you had read the books and you said it was probably one of the best literary, series that you've ever read. You said it was fantastic and it was rich universe and it seemed ripe for a movie to be based on this very rich universe with these very rich, eccentric characters. And, I read a little bit about it before when they first announced it, and I was excited because the premise of the universe sounds great, and what we saw was interesting and fascinating, and I want to see more, but they just sort of never really got into it. There's a point where the main character, Idris Elba, the
gunslinger, right? Roland Deschain.
Yeah, the gunslinger. He uses tools that are interesting, but there's no setup for them, and you want to know more, but they never gave it to you. It's like,
okay, there you go.
There's a lot of inside knowledge here, and like, you have to know more about this. It's almost like you had to read the books to really enjoy the movie, but it's not a true adaptation. So if you actually read the books to understand the movie, you're not going to enjoy the movie. If you didn't read the books, you're not going to understand the movie. So
right.
It's backwards.
I sat there, and they cheated. They cheated, Brian. This was cheap. It was a setup for a TV series that they're planning to launch. All this was marketing for a TV show that they're trying to do. And honestly, Ron Howard and Brian Glazer have been trying to do this for years. The Dark Tower's been trying to be done for years. It used to be they were going to do a TV series adaptation that was actually after the first season or first 2 seasons was going to go into a summer blockbuster to continue the story in a movie and then drop back into the TV show. It was cool. It was a really cool idea. They were going to TV series it, throw it into a movie, blockbuster, roll back into it. It was a really cool idea. It never happened. And if you noticed, if you looked at this, that Ron Howard's name is on this movie. He's a producer for this movie. And, honestly, Ron, Opie, I'm disappointed at what you guys did. This is cheap marketing. You're going to see a lot of stuff come out about the TV series. Maybe. When you're sporting a 19 on Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, okay, what Peter Jackson did with The Lord of the Rings was awesome. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close, and they stayed true to the story. He did it in 3 movies. They're 3 long movies, but if you love the books, you have movies that you can go back to and look at, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, The Dark Tower isn't like that, Brian. I mean, Jake Chambers is not the main character of the story. Why was he the main character of the movie?
Because he's a kid, and that lately these movies are coming out where they make the main character some kid that they can build an entire universe around, so they can get an eight movie franchise, and he's still young enough to play it. And they're doing that a lot, that they're thinking about 15 years from now instead of thinking about the movie they're making.
So it's the Harry Potter effect.
Here's a problem with rewriting stories that literary masters have written. How dare you be so arrogant that you think that you can take a story that Stephen King wrote and change it and think that you're going to write either a better or something as good as what he wrote that millions and millions of fans already love, because you're thinking about 15 years from now because of Harry Potter or other series that manage to have main characters of kids and work. They need a young person as here's the golden goose, right? Everybody's the golden goblet. Hollywood's always chasing the Harry Potter franchise, where they get the young kid to play the main character, and they know they're going to get 9 movies out of it and make billions of dollars. Because if it was the gunslinger, they're limited on how many movies they're going to get, not because of his age, but most of the older actors don't want to be stuck into 9 movies as it is. The younger guys do.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right.
It's the holy grail. Let me get a 10-movie franchise out of a 12-year-old.
Right, and I don't even know if the studio was doing that, because, I mean, maybe they were thinking about it, but the reality is that the motivation of the character has changed. He's obsessed with the Dark Tower. He's not obsessed with the Man in Black. The Man in Black is a small piece of the story. He's played a significant role, but you don't see him that much. Matthew McConaughey was in that movie more than anybody else, except for maybe the kid, maybe Jake Chambers.
Because between him and Idris Elba, bro, he's top billed, right?
And I get that, but I mean, they didn't portray him correctly. I mean, Matthew McConaughey did a great job, by the way. I feel like he really acted well, and he came across as, oh wow, he's pretty threatening and scary. I got that. So he did a good job as the Man in Black. And you got to remember, this character, if you're familiar with Stephen King universe, the Man in Black is also from The Stand. He was the villain in The Stand, which is a huge Stephen King book. This character, this is a Stephen King universe where it's an art of subtlety. The books touch each other. A lot of books touch each other in a very subtle way. The fact that they use the term the shine. I'm sorry. It hurt my heart every time to hear somebody say, "Oh, Jake, don't use the shine. Don't use it. They're tracking you." What the heck, man? I mean, The Shining doesn't touch this book. The Doctor Sleep, which was one of the recent Stephen King novels that came out, which was a grown-up version of The Shining, was people being tracked using the shine. This has nothing to do with the Gunslinger novels.
Can you explain to me what The Shine is?
Okay, so the Shining.
I didn't understand that whatsoever.
Okay, so Stephen King is, since the beginning of time when he started writing books, always writes about the power of the mind. If you go back to Carrie or Firestarter or a lot of the books he's written, there's a thing where they use basically mental powers, telepathy. But here's the thing.
The kid is like psychic or something, right?
Well, sort of. So let me explain it. The Shining, which was his second major novel, came out, and basically the character, one of the memorable roles is the child has the shining, which he's able to see things in his mind. He basically has mind powers. So throughout Stephen King's books, this has happened. In the Dark Tower, there's a version of this. The kids are basically being taken so that they can use the powers of their mind to destroy the beams, not the Dark Tower. They were shooting the Dark Tower. It was dumb. The beams are what they're destroying, so the Dark Tower fall. You can't destroy the Dark Tower. It's so dumb. So,
yeah, Matthew
anyways,
McConaughey wanted to destroy the Dark Tower, right?
that's not how the story goes. They destroy the beam so that the Dark Tower will fall.
Yeah, I didn't understand the motivation. What was the motivation for McConaughey, the Man in Black, to destroy the Dark Tower? Why?
Because he, well, in the movie, he wants to bring these creatures from the Boundary universe into this universe so he could rule it. It's not that clear in the books. It was the Crimson King was crazy, and he wants to destroy the universe. So there's just, I mean, I understood everything that happened in the movie from a perspective of being a Stephen King fan, but you didn't.
No.
And the movie wasn't for me. The movie was for you.
Yeah. And
To be more clear, the movie was for kids, probably. I don't know.
But I'm still super gray on here.
We could literally talk about this to go through it. But anyways, so they threw in a Pennywise sign from It, which I thought was unnecessary. I mean, Pennywise, it's just, I don't understand why they did it. It's not from the books. It didn't make any sense. They didn't need an homage to It. The character itself, Pennywise, the alien creature, if you guys know anything about that story, there is a creature like it in the Dark Tower series. But you didn't see that in this story. So I don't know. The Shine thing drove me insane, though. It's so cheesy, and it was so not Dark Tower. It's like they wanted to say Stephen King universe and scream it and make it obvious, but it's a subtle thing. Stephen King universe is subtle.
Yeah, isn't Pennywise in the Dark Tower?
No, Pennywise is the clown from It.
Yeah, but I guess that creature is in the Dark Tower.
A creature like It, like him. There are multiple of these creatures.
Obviously, because they're like the same race or whatever.
Right. There is one in book 7, book 6, 7. Book 7.
And that's the problem. This is how many books are in the series?
Small part, yeah.
How many books are in the series, bro?
There's 8.
So they try to take 8 books and just sort of blend them into one movie.
Sort of, but they didn't use most of the main characters. They only used, 3 of them. The people from Midworld, they used some of the language that Stephen King came up with, like things like pleasant days and pleasant nights, and you've forgotten the face of your father. That was used a couple times. But the seer lady that they had,
right?
She talked like somebody from America. It was just really weird. I didn't get any very realism there. They did a good job with the Taheen showing the sewing of the skin. Basically, the Taheen are animals,
right?
Humanoid animals, a different race, and they're they are doing what the Crimson King wants them to do. So there were some elements that were taken from the book that were pretty good. The roses. Did you see the roses at the end when the rose is the Dark Tower in Keystone Earth? There's so much to this.
When I saw the rose reference, I was like, oh, now I understand, because we had this thing we were working on a couple months ago for the Dark Tower that had graphics where you're like, use one rose. I remember that.
It's true.
Use the one rose. And I'm like, why? Like, trust me, it works. And then I understand when I saw the movie.
Well, in the movie, they had a large rose and a small rose. And I wasn't sure what they were trying to do. Were they trying to say the Gunslinger and Jake Chambers? They had the Tet Corporation, which was cool because they're a Ka-Tet. They used the words. There were so many Easter eggs in this movie. 1919 is a key thing. That's something that's important to the books. The Ka-Tet of 19. The Sombra Corporation is the bad guys. You saw that thrown all over the place. Mm-hmm. There's so many different things in here that were interesting. So one person from Collider who was talking with Stephen King said it was like they took all the Dark Tower books and blended them up and then shot out a movie.
Right.
And Stephen King just kind of laughed at it. But if you're going to do a standalone movie, that's it. How do you do sequels to this? I don't know.
I can tell you how. You make book 1, and then for the sequel, you make book 2, and then for the third movie, you make book 3. That's what it should have been. Or I would have been totally cool if the first movie had been the first 2 books. Do it that way. Pull them together.
You can cut out a lot. I mean, Stephen King is a character-driven writer. A lot of his work is detailing out characters, which you can do easily on the screen. It's not that hard to bring the whole thing to life. Skip some scenes that don't matter, but basically get the core. Eddie's not there. Main character. His wife isn't there. I mean, there's just a lot of things that didn't happen.
The main character in the book is not in the movie?
Well, no, the main character in the book is Roland.
Right.
He is the main character. When Stephen King started writing this, he said he saw a version of himself as well as Clint Eastwood, who was doing spaghetti westerns at the
This
time.
version
That's
of
who he
Roland
envisioned.
spent a lot of time in the sun, bro.
Oh,
Sure.
Idris Elba. Oh, and by the way, Idris Elba, yeah, there was some controversy about him being black, but Idris Elba, he did a good job. I thought he was a good Roland.
He did good.
I was not unhappy at all. I am a very big fan of Idris Elba.
The problem with this movie was not the acting.
No, the acting was not the problem.
Surprisingly,
It's
it
the
was
story.
the writing. The story was confusing and condensed. It was clearly condensed because there was so much they just didn't pay off. They didn't set up or pay off. They just sort of threw it in there. There's a lot thrown in this movie that is just confusing to the audience that didn't read the books. And on top of it, there's entire acts that are rushed, and then other pieces that are so slow.
It was
that I was sitting there just waiting for something to happen. And I'm like, how is so much of this movie super slow, while other parts of it, other acts, other things that you want to know more about it are rushed through, and they never give you any payoff or setup.
I can explain that. Because while it was slow, and I recognized it was slow, every one of those little slow pieces were little homages to things that I understand and know. Small little details about the world moving on, about all the different little setups that were slow were things from the novel. So they were supposed to kind of pander to people who understand the books. But because the movie was overall disappointing to people who were purists, they just ended up disappointing both audiences. They tried to rush it and get some action. I will say I really enjoyed the scene where Roland, where Idris Elba, aims and doesn't even aim. He puts up his gun and basically shoots the Tahine stealing Jake. I like that because that's an accurate representation of Roland Deschain.
Right.
He would have made that shot. But I want the Roland Deschain with 3 fingers. A lot of people are saying that, how do I do this without ruining the novels for you?
Don't worry about it. You're not going to ruin it for me.
Well, I will tell you. The ending of The Dark Tower, the final book of The Dark Tower, is, in my opinion, one of the greatest didn't see that coming moments.
Okay, don't tell me.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's a Matrix moment. It's when Keanu sits up and you're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't real. He was in a machine. He's in a computer. It's one of those moments at the end of this book. And what I can tell you is that by doing this story and them claiming what they claim about how they were able to pull this off is not possible by the way the books are written. Roland shouldn't be able to kill the Man in Black. That should not have happened. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like looking at it going, that's not. I mean, the Man in Black to Roland is the guy with the answers. He's the guy who he hates him. He's done a lot of things in his past, but he's above Roland in a lot of ways.
He's the architect,
he's beyond Roland.
Like in Matrix.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, he is almost. He's like the Crimson King is the true architect, but this is like the right-hand man of the Crimson King. The Crimson King, I guess you could say he's like, I don't know, like Satan or something maybe, or like he is the bad element of the universe. He's trying to destroy it. And the Man in Black is his wizard. And the Man in Black in all of Stephen King's stuff, he wins, man. He wins. So it was weird to see him laying there with a bullet through his head. Totally unrealistic.
Talk about cutting off the ability to use that character in any other movies they plan to do.
Oh, they'll just be like, oh, he's a wizard. He's not really dead.
Matthew
Come on. I don't know.
McConaughey, a top-billed actor, did well in the role of a character that Stephen King fans are love, they're rabid about, and we're gonna kill him off in the first movie. That makes a whole lot of sense, guys. There are so many things in this movie that don't make sense to me. It's not just because I didn't read the books. It's because I saw story elements that had potential completely fall apart. It's not just the killing of the Man in Black, but so many story elements that could have paid out in the future if it was just massaged properly. That looked right, that looked fascinating, like the world itself, the universe looked fascinating, that fell apart, that completely fell apart because other story elements just clashed, and the story is not great. Honestly, and the CGI is not great either. CGI is like, this movie had a $60 million budget?
Yep.
I feel like the CGI should have been a lot better. Like visually this movie should have been better, not just because the content, the source material, there's so much you can do with that visually and make a masterpiece, a visual masterpiece. But they just didn't have the cinematographer or the right CGI guy to really make that happen.
Well, which doesn't make sense. Can I just take a big crap on Sony right now?
Yeah,
because I would love to. I would love to take a big crap on Sony. What was the last good movie that Sony made? I mean, they destroyed the Spider-Man franchise.
Homecoming. Oh wait, no, Marvel did that.
Yeah. So tell me what Sony's done that makes any sense whatsoever. Why do they have this movie in their hands? Why do they choose? Why do they choose Nikolaj Arcel to be the director of this movie when he's been a writer on almost everything he's done?
Yeah.
And what he's directed has been nothing that's made any that's good.
Their direction choice was crap. And I gotta say, Ron Howard being a producer on this is a cop-out.
Well, and he needs a win because, Ron Howard hasn't done anything good in a while.
Why didn't Ron Howard direct this? Like, he's a director.
I don't know. That's a great question.
Why only producer? Either he didn't believe in the script, which he could have changed. He's Ron freaking Howard. Or he didn't want to, or they didn't want to pay what was necessary to get him in there.
I think that has a lot to do with it. And I also think they knew that in order to do this right, you had to go all the way. You couldn't do it halfway. If you did it halfway, it was going to result in more than likely a disaster. You had to go all the way. You had to go back and do an entire, series of 3, 4, or 5 movies. That's the only way this was going to happen properly. So they knew Ron Howard wasn't going to direct this disaster.
Then why not be true to the books, just so they can make a quick buck and move on?
So they could make a quick buck and move on, and now they can do a TV series that they hope will happen, which apparently Idris Elba is being talked about as being the character in that. But I don't know. I mean, this movie's not going to make a lot of money. They're going to lose.
There will not be a TV show, and I guarantee you, if there is a TV show, Idris Elba will not be a part of it.
I wouldn't. Why would he? He's a top-billed actor in Hollywood right now.
Top-billed actor. You think Matthew McConaughey is going to be a part of a TV show? No way, dude. That's gonna dilute his brand. He's not about that. Idris Elba is not going to be in a TV show, and they're not going to make it because the movie's going to tank. And even if they did say we're going to go through with the TV show, and we got Idris Elba is going to get out of that contract if even he signed it, because besides diluting his brand, this is a movie he doesn't want on his record at this point. It's so many crap.
I got to tell you, man, he's done 18 movies in the last 2 years. Idris Elba.
Wow.
I mean, the guy is busy. He was the main villain in the most recent Star Trek movie. I mean, he was in Prometheus back in 2012. I mean, this guy's really done a lot of great stuff. I love Idris Elba. I want to see him do more. I'm just disappointed because it's not going to be his Roland Deschain. I don't see that.
No, neither do I. I have nothing much more to say about it. If I had to give this movie a rating, I would say 2.5 out of 5. There was parts of it I liked. There was parts that some of the action sequences I loved. like as self-contained scenes because they weren't coherent as a story, but as by themselves. I like the acting was great. I thought the universe has so much potential, but I would not trust the people that made this movie to give me anything but doubt and frustration for another movie built in the same universe. Because the universe was not built by them, but it's clearly fascinating. It makes me want to read the books, honestly.
I would suggest that that everybody who felt like you did, I think that was what you just said was fantastic, because the reality is this universe is really fantastic. It is. And there is a large amalgam of a lot of the Stephen King books have tied into this. There's a part in the Dark Tower series where they actually go into an Earth that's the Stand. For a very brief, short time, they go into the Stand. The Dark Tower series has these characters meet their maker. They meet Stephen King in Keystone Earth. So, but I would suggest you go back and read a few books. Go back and read. You're going to need them for this if you really want to understand it all. There's maybe we'll come up with a list for people. We'll put it on the page so that they know. Go back and read these books or listen to these books from Stephen King. Then do the Dark Tower series. And if you do it that way, it's going to be. You're going to know everything, and at the end of it, you're going to be like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I did this in my life. I'm glad I've done this."
And you know what? If you don't like reading, you can get those that you get them on Audible. I plan to listen to them.
Listen to it.
When I'm walking or jogging or whatever, podcast, dude. Hey, speaking of amazing works of art, what shirt is that you're wearing?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh, this is. Oh, yeah, yes. This is cool, man. In honor of my Stephen of the Dark Tower coming out, I went ahead and had the guys at Mixed Tees make me this design. I'm just kidding. They didn't make it for me, but they did send it to me. And basically, it's an It shirt. It's like a combination of Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a combination of It and Ronald McDonald. And if you know It
and Ronald McDonald, yeah.
I'm so excited for the movie coming up. I think it's going to be so much better than the Dark Tower. Remake.
I hope so, because we were excited about Dark Tower. So,
well, but I was not excited after seeing the trailers. But the It trailers are getting me pretty excited.
Yeah, the It trailers are great.
But if you can read it here, I don't know if you can read it. It says, "Bring your friends." It's got a little. It's got a.
Hold it up like this. Hold it up more.
Okay. It's got a balloon. In the Ronald McDonald patch, so for the It clown as it's floating.
I'm loving it, Dairy Man.
I'm loving.
Bring it up a little more.
It.
Bring it up a little more. Over 80 billion children served.
right. So it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna wear this to the It premiere when it comes out. And so thanks guys for making sure I had this. You guys know
we
how
all
huge
float down here.
We all float. You'll float too if you went and saw the movie. You saw that preview, so it's gonna be great.
So that's it for me. Do you have anything else to say about this steaming pile of turds?
I could talk about this endlessly because that's the way it is. And there's so much more to this story. There's so much disappointment. I wish Stephen King doesn't seem to be too upset about it. I don't know if that's a money thing. I'm a little disappointed that he's happy about it.
It's hard to be upset when you're cashing checks, bro.
It is. It's really hard, but it's his. I know he doesn't care about the movies that much. He really doesn't. I mean, he's not one of those guys that is impressed with seeing his stuff on film. He doesn't need it. He's happy with what's in his books, and so good for him. But if you're like us, who just can't wait to see your favorite stuff visually presented, it's an unbelievable disappointment.
Yeah. I have this conspiracy theory that Stephen King wants the movies to fail so that people buy the books.
Maybe. If you like to read books, this is something you have to read in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Tale of Two Cities, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the Dark Tower series. You have to do it.
All right. Well, that's it for us. We'll be back on Monday with a fresh new topic.
Ooh,
we are going to be talking
exciting.
about a little video game known as Dota 2 because the International is starting on Monday. The International 7 is this massive event. Millions and millions and millions of dollars and millions and millions and millions of people flood to Seattle once a year for a week, and next week is that week. And so to start it off, we're going to be giving you guys a little rundown of what we like, our favorite teams, and how it's working out. And if you don't know about this, Google Dota 2, Google the International, and come check out this podcast. We're going to give you the ins and outs. This is an amazing thing. And then after that, we'll be back for AGT week 4 judge cuts on Wednesday. What was that?
And let me give you the tag for this, the thing that always amazes everybody. Most people don't realize there are millions of dollars. People are playing a video game for millions of dollars, and a lot of those people are teenagers. So, hey, guess what, teenagers? You want to be rich? Start watching Dota 2.
Yeah.
Go watch National.
Dude, last year there was a 17-year-old kid, or the year before that, a 17-year-old kid that became a millionaire after winning this tournament with his team. A millionaire, 17 years old. He's already worth 30 times more than we will ever be worth. And this guy
don't let your parents tell you video games will take you nowhere.
Yeah, because maybe in the 90s that was the case, but nowadays, I mean, there's entire teams of people. I mean, this thing is huge. It's going to be on ESPN. I think the top prize for the top team, like the number one prize, is like $23 million to a team of 5, like basically children.
All right, so make sure you tune in so you can hear all about it.
Monday we're talking about that, and Wednesday with Judge Cuts 4. And I hope that if you haven't seen the movie, don't bother. Go read the books instead.
Go read the books.
Find us at youtube.com/mixtees, facebook.com/mixtees, and twitter.com/mixtees, and of course, mixtees.com/popcasts. We'll see you on Monday.
See you Monday.